If you've all seen the May 2023 ban list and are wondering what decks are going to be good and what's going to happen to the decks that were hit on the ban list, then you've come to the right place. My name is tcgsam and this is going to be the May 2023 ban list damage report, where I'll be going over the decks that were hit as well as decks that got cards back and discussing what I think they'll do to the meta. So if you enjoyed this type of content, be sure to let me know by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. With that being said, let's just hop straight into it. So the first thing is Kashtira, the elephant in the room. Even though it did technically get the most cards hit on the ban list, I really don't feel like these hits are going to do anything to the deck in terms of its competitive viability as well as its game plan. So I feel like the Kashtira players will just change a few tech cards around, maybe a few extra deck cards around, but essentially their game plan will still be the same most of the time, I would think. So unless there's something crazy that comes out in like the next while, I feel like Kashtira is not really going to change, and it's definitely still going to be one of the top contenders, if not the best deck in the format still, even after this ban list. So not much to say about this. I personally feel like this ban list wasn't enough to really do anything to it, and I still think it's going to be a really good deck that most people are going to have to respect. Perhaps the most interesting one now is Superheavy Samurai. So of course hitting Scarecrow is huge for the deck, not only because it takes away those one card combos, so now essentially it's very difficult to play with just one card, but also taking away that recursion to be able to bring back like extra soul piercers to keep sending them to the grave to get infinite searches during turn is also really big. So I think this is definitely a huge hit to the deck's viability. But here I have two different game plans which I personally think will be decently viable potentially for the Superheavy Samurais that go down. And the first one is going to be the Gimmick Puppet stuff. So you can make Gimmick Puppet Chimera Doll since it is only taking 2 machine monsters and your entire deck is machine. And even though Cyberstein is banned, you can still do something like Muddy Mud Dragon to fusion out into the Albion the Sanctifier Dragon to cheat it out. I don't know how viable or easy it's going to be to do that, but it's definitely still an option on the table where you can go Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. Another one is Snowplow Hustle Rustle. Essentially, all this card does is it's sort of like a Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, except you can't special summon except machine type monsters, so it's a little bit worse than Gimmick Puppet because it's not going to work like in a mirror, for example, but it could be a little easier to access because you do only need to play like in-engine Superheavy Samurai cards like Superheavy Samurai Transporter to actually get this combo off. Once again, the consistency of these combos have gone down significantly and you'll need multiple cards now to perform them, but there's still potential option. Now another option, and I think probably the option that super heavies are going to go down, a lot of them, is, in my opinion, the Orcus route. So I did some quick tinkering with it, and it's definitely a very powerful part. Still, you can still end on some really great boards, and even though some of your combos now take 2 cards, there are still some 1 card combos, which is actually pretty insane that you can still do in this deck, and you can still end on like the Orcus part of the deck now, which will give your deck some resilience as well to a card like Dark Ruler No More if people are still playing that. Do expect a deck profile for this, which will be coming out once I do a little bit more testing with the deck in maybe a couple of weeks or so, but I personally feel like that the Orcus version has a lot of potential and can definitely still make great use of the Superheavy Samurai engine in it. So while this deck took a huge hit, I still think it will be in the tier 2 range where people tinker out with different combos with it just because of how versatile the engine is still. So do keep in mind that this deck is still going to be a decent threat to a lot of other decks in the meta. Next up is Puurly, and while a Delicious Memory hit to 1 may not seem like a big deal, it's actually pretty huge for the deck because the way that they get these quick play spells to hand guaranteed is with a card like My Friend Puurly, but now with My Friend Puurly, you can only reveal 1 Delicious Memory at a time, making it very difficult to guarantee a Delicious Memory in your hand. And it's very important to have access to the Delicious Memory just because you need this to make Puurly plump, which is one of the main XYZ monsters in the deck to help you rank up into Noir. So I think one option they could consider doing is Foolish Burial Goods. Of course, this isn't particularly great because it's inherently a -1, but you can guarantee yourself a delicious memory in the graveyard to go into with Puurly Lily afterwards to guarantee that plump. You could also play a card like Pot of Prosperity just to dig deeper into your deck, but of course that does open you up to Joel and Lockbird a little bit harder. And the other option I have down here is just sort of become like a Zeus turbo deck. The Puurly deck is still very good at putting out big XYZ monsters with like a bunch of Xyz material under it, so it could become like a Zeus turbo deck where like maybe you could think about blinding second or something, or like going first, and if it doesn't work out, just like try surviving and then making like a Zeus on the crackback and then breaking their board with that. It's just a potential option. I don't think this is the one that they're going to go down, but I just want to present different options out there. Next up is Branded, and while Expulsion got banned, I don't think this changes much. A lot of people knew this as well, though. You can just make Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. You do have to commit a little bit more to it because it's not as free offsetting like Expulsion off of something like a copy of Albion the Branded Dragon, but Sanctifier still lets you do the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare Lock, which is still going to be really gross. Although with Sanctifier, there are a few more ways to stop this Gypsy, just because it is a monster card and not a trap card like Expulsion. There are a couple more outs to the Sanctifier Dragon, so it's not that bad, but Branded's definitely still going to be one of the top decks in the format, and I definitely think you guys should watch out for this because I think it's going to definitely be up there with Kashtira, just because of how powerful the Gimmick Puppet Lock is. Before we get any further into the video, I just want to ask you guys to quickly check out your playmat and CardTrader Zero using my affiliate links in the description below. You'll be helping to support the channel just by signing up, and even if you don't make a purchase at all, I'd greatly appreciate you just checking out the site, just because registering for an account using my affiliate link does give me some benefits as well. But if you do choose to buy something, then you'll also be helping to support the channel while getting the best products. So once again, be sure to check out them in the using the links in the description below. With that being said, let's just get back into the video now. Next up is going to be Mathmech. Mathmech Circular 1 does hurt a little bit. It hurts its consistency a decent amount. Of course, you still have cards like Silent Mining and Small World to be able to search this out, so it's not the end of the world. It's not like you'll never see Circular again. Also, any rank 4 just makes Alan Bertrand searches Circular, so it's still going to be a really good deck. I just think now people are going to pivot more towards the Firewall Defensor engine, just because the Firewall Defensor engine is very good at pumping out those level 4 bodies. Just Firewall Defensor alone is still like full combo. But also the thing with Defensor is now if you don't have access to like Circular, now you at least have access to like your Cyber's toolbox. You can still make cards like Heat Soul or Neo Tempest Terahertz off of cards like Defensor, just because of how strong these Cyber's monsters are. So I think that could be one option for the Mathmech deck. Instead of playing like maybe like a pure version, now you probably have to play Defensor just because of how strong it is. But another lesser known option is actually pivoting more towards like a combo based Cyber's box deck. So this is also something I've been thinking about. Mathmech at the moment as it stands is sort of in between mid-range and combo. It's not exactly like a big combo deck where it spits out a massive board turn 1, but by pivoting towards that, you can play cards like Silent Codec, which gets you infinite searches during a turn pretty much. You can go like the Cyber Sage route to just fill up like more and more combos using like the Mathmech cards, sort of like as an engine, as generic Cyber's extenders rather than a standalone deck. And you definitely still have the option to play cards like Super Factorial in the deck or whatnot. So definitely keep an eye out for this. This is also a deck profile that I'll be uploading eventually once I figure out more of the combos and the profile. So do stay tuned for that. But either way, I think Mathmech still can be a very strong tier 1 contender, even though it lost 2 of its most important card. Next up is Naturia Runick, which had Naturia Sacred Tree as well as Runick Fountain hit. Runick Fountain hit doesn't really matter at all. It's mainly the Naturia Sacred Tree hit. And this is a decent, fairly big hit because now it makes it so not only do you have less good discards off of the Runick cards, but also now your Naturia like Camellia is not going to be able to send anything great past like the first Sacred Tree. So it does cut off your grind game a little bit, which can be a little annoying. So I think some options you can have are, one, start pivoting more towards like a Sprite route. You can maybe try playing like the Nimble stuff in the deck to summon out your Nimble Beavers, because Nimble Angler does trigger off of the Runick stuff when you discarded it off of a card like Hugin. So you could try doing something like that. You could also just do nothing, honestly, and pretty much switch around a few tech cards, take out like 2 Sacred Tree, and keep trying to play the deck the way that it is. I think it's still going to be playable. It may not be as strong because just any Runick spell plus Sacred Tree was just so strong back then, but even though it's going to be less consistent now, I still feel like the deck is incredibly powerful. It has a very good grind game with the Naturia cards. The Runick cards as well offer it a great grind game, and Naturia Beast is still one hell of a card, so definitely a very strong deck still, but I don't think it's going to be like near the forefront in the meta. It'll probably be like very, very low tier 1, very high tier 2 in my opinion. This deck was sort of falling out even before the ban list, so I feel like it's going to kind of continue on that trajectory as it stands. So next up is going to be Sprite and its different variants like Char Brigade Sprite. Sprite Starter 2 just doesn't really matter at all. Honestly, I don't think any of those decks are going to change. Heck, some of those decks may not have even been playing 3-starter to begin with. But like if you're playing like any Sprite variant and played 3-starter, well, you just play 2-starter now and something else. It doesn't really matter. It may as well have not had a hit at all just because of how just how this hit did absolutely nothing at all. It just very marginally lowers its consistency and extension past like disruptions, which I guess is all right, but the Sprite stuff is still going to be very good. Definitely, I feel like it's going to be a tier 1 deck still, just because of how powerful the Sprite engine has always been. You still have access to Gigantic. You have the option to summon now not only your Sprite cards, but also cards like Ibly now, so you can still Ibly lock your opponent if that's something you're trying to do. And I think overall Sprite is just going to still be a great deck just because this hit doesn't really do anything. And so many other decks have been weakened to where now Sprite, I think, can definitely rise up and be one of the best decks of the format. And then finally, we have Sky Striker. So we did get Engage back to 2 and Multi-Roll back to 3. So of course, this is definitely going to benefit the deck a lot, help it with consistency a little bit, also help it with recovery. So the first option I think with Sky Striker is nothing's really going to change. You're still going to play like similar builds as you did before. Of course, now you're going to play double Engage because it's the best card in your deck. But with 3 multi-roll, you might bump up the number to 2 or 3, but overall still have like a similar deck list of where you just have a couple of hand traps. You're trying to play like a slow control game. But another option I think you can go down is maybe like a Uber like control route with Floodgates. Like There Can Be Only One, because There Can Be Only One can still be very strong against like the top meta decks out there. So if you play like just a bunch of Floodgates, you playing like, let's say like triple multi-roll, so you're able to get a spell back every turn and slowly start out resourcing your opponent, I think that's something that you can do as well. Overall, I think Sky Strikers definitely got a lot out of this ban list. Do I think they're going to be good? Probably not. I think they're going to be like a solid tier 2 deck. That's sort of where they were before. Maybe they definitely got a little bit of a boost up, but I still don't think it'll break into the tier 1 meta, just because the deck just isn't that great compared to like other powerhouses out there. Yeah, it doesn't always have a problem with Kashtira because it does play multiple outs with like non-engine as well as like Widow Anchor and Afterburner, so you do have outs to the Kashtira Arise Heart. But the problem with Striker has just been like sort of in this day and age, like sometimes it can be a bit slow to get started, and that can be a big problem. And unless you're able to slow down your opponent to your pace, it can be difficult for it to compete sometimes as well. But that's just my opinion and my opinion only. So if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. Let me know in the comment section down below if you think I missed anything, or if there are any other decks you want to talk about. Do leave it in the comment section below. But with that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.